Welcome to Relatively Stable, where we explore the transformative journeys of those who have built their lives around listening to their guts, how they followed their passions, and the roads they took to finding resilience, wellness, and balance. And each episode probably, but not always, will involve a horse. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Sue Lomenzo of True Nature Equine Bodywork and Wellness. Sue is an immensely respected equine bodyworker based in Jonesboro, Tennessee. Her approach combines many different techniques and a deep commitment to listening to the horses as she helps them find their way back into balance. Her journey started as a horse-crazed kid, grew through years of mainstream career life, and ultimately brought her back to the world of horses and a deeper purpose. In this conversation, Sue shares how her work has evolved over the years, her dedication to listening to the horses she works with, and how she's found a way to blend science with intuition to achieve powerful, transformative results. We also discuss her commitment to helping horse owners deepen their connection to their horses and empower them to contribute to their horses' physical and emotional well-being. Let's get started. Thank you so much, Sue Lomenzo, for joining me this afternoon. And I have so many questions for you. But I remember the first time I got to be in your presence was at a clinic and chased you down in a parking lot to tell you what a fangirl I was and how I stalked you on the internet and I just wanted to read everything that you were putting out there. But thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my complete and total pleasure. It's great to be here with you.
And I have so many different directions of questions that I want to talk to you about. But can you just give me a history of what brought you to horses and what brought you to the work that you do now?
Absolutely. So my history with horses started out when I was 9 years old. And we had moved to a different place when I was nine. And I actually think that my mom signed me up for the lessons as one of many ways to kind of get me involved in stuff and all that kind of thing. And I just took to it like an absolute fish to water. I can remember that moment, the first time, that first lesson, being absolutely scared to death for about 37 seconds. And then some other switch flipped, and I was like, wow. So
Do you remember that first horse?
I do. I do. I don't remember his name. It was a chestnut gelding. I don't remember his name. Amazingly, I haven't looked in the last couple of years. Maybe it was about 2 years ago, but the stable still exists. And it's in a part of the world. It's on Long Island, New York, where development has happened like crazy. Real estate is very expensive in this area. And the stable I just thought to look it up. And I was like, oh my God, it's still there. Amazing.
Are they
So
still offering lessons and doing the
I
whole?
don't know. I didn't dive into it. Just wanted to sort of understand what was happening, if that property was still had anything to do with horses. And it looked almost exactly the same. And I mean, we're talking a few decades. So yeah, that was very cool. So anyway, that's how that started. And then I was a complete and total, horse crazed little girl and was lucky enough to be able to have my own pony and rode literally 365 or went to the barn 365 days a year when I could. I mean, I remember my mother taking me to the barn on Christmas, bless her heart. I mean, I was completely obsessed. So yeah, so I did that until, sort of late high school. And then it just kind of petered out for me like it does for a lot of kids kind of at that age. And then I went off and had an adult life and, went to college and lived in the big city and then moved to another big city. And horses they never left my heart, but I didn't really pursue it. And then in my 30s, I met a woman in the DC area where I was living who had a couple of horses. And she invited me to go out and ride with her on occasion. And I started doing that fairly regularly. and it was wonderful. And then I did that for a couple of years. And then when she moved the horses further away and it just wasn't feasible anymore, I kind of went back to a non-horse life, which when I look back on it, it's astounding to me that I dipped back in to the horses. And then when they weren't there anymore in that situation, I didn't really pursue it. I don't know. So fast forward after that, about 15 years when I moved to Western North Carolina, and within 6 months of moving there, met a woman who's one of my dearest friends here now who had horses, and we got talking. And she said, "Oh my God, you ride, come out and ride with me." And that was the beginning of the path that over the course of several years led me to where I am now. So
Where were you in DC when you were riding?
I was
What?
living in the city.
Okay.
Yeah, I was living and working in DC.
Were you riding in Maryland or were you riding in
I
Virginia?
was riding in Maryland, out in southern Maryland, about an hour south of the city.
And I spent a year of my life traveling back and forth to that area. And
Mhm.
the very first day when I was in the neighborhood in Maryland, which was just right outside the city, I met somebody at a stop sign and she had a horse. And it was just kind of instantaneous. And then I'm
Mhm.
visiting farms up there and I didn't go up there for any horse purpose whatsoever. And I'm just really I love how the horses find us when they're supposed to find us.
Yeah, I guess, it's, yeah, I don't know. It's like they plopped back into my life fairly significantly for those couple of years. I mean, I was going out there after work a couple of nights a week and riding on the weekends when I could. And it was mostly trail riding, and I was mostly doing it by myself because her schedule didn't always coordinate with mine. And it was lovely. And on this lovely old, retired gray hunter jumper dude who was just super sweet. Yeah. And then, it would be another 15 years before horses would come back into my life, or when I would be ready for them to come back into my life, I guess. So, and then they came back full force. Yeah.
They didn't give you a choice.
No. Yeah, I was very happy not to have any choice.
And I know that a lot of people listening are familiar with your work, but for those who aren't, can you give a synopsis of the work that you do with horses?
Sure. So I am a body worker, and the main modalities that I use to work with the horses are very gentle but deep, that take a whole horse approach, like a whole horse system approach. So I utilized craniosacral therapy. That was the first modality I started with, and I still utilize it a lot. It's really at the heart of my practice, actually. And then I have added on a couple of other things that I have found the combination of these things have really worked well together, like the balance through movement method, nerve release work, and some general sort of myofascial release type of work. But it's all very quiet, not a lot of, sort of physical big moves. I'm not stretching the horse, I'm not cranking anything. It's pretty quiet but deep stuff. So
What led you into that type of work specifically to that mode of body
Mhm.
work?
Mhm. Yeah, once I got interested, I was lucky because once I got interested in the idea of body work, not knowing very much about it, a dear friend of mine who lives down near the Tryon area in North Carolina suggested that I connect with this body worker, a woman who'd been doing the work for many years, and she just thought that it would be a good idea for me to meet her.
Mhm.
And I did eventually, and I ended up, and she also taught courses, and I ended up signing up for her 10-day intensive. And she was still is a craniosacral therapist specialist. And I didn't know a damn thing about it. And I took the course, which was about body work and nutrition and homeopathy. I mean, she covered a lot of stuff because she has a lot of knowledge. And I knew by 11 o'clock on the first morning of the 10 days that I had found it. I mean, it was instant that even without really knowing at any depth about what the work was really about, I just instantly saw the effect and the way that it worked. And it just really spoke to me. So I know that one of the things you had mentioned talking about today was like, have you ever considered yourself, were you in the mainstream and now you're out of the mainstream in terms of what you do? I've always been outside the mainstream because this work is not, it's becoming actually more mainstream now, which is awesome. But when I started, 8 or 10 years ago, it was still kind of like, what,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, but so I never was like a traditional, sports massage person, and there's a place for that. And I know great people who do that, and it's wonderful. But yeah, so that's what I do. Gentle, deep, holistic stuff that works on the entire horse's body and emotional state also.
And that's fascinating to me. Were you initially interested in kind of learning all of those modalities in that intensive for your own horse, or was it just in general?
It was just in general. I mean, I was thinking about making a career change, which is why I was taking the course actually. And I did not have my own horse at that time. So it was definitely about, I knew that I wanted to get up from behind the desk that I had been sitting at for 30 years doing something completely different. And that was part of the journey to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And I realized first that it needed to be with animals because that's always been a very deep connection for me. And then it was kind of a no-brainer that it would be the horses because they've always called to me. Haven't always maybe heeded the call or heard it, but then I did. And yeah, so that's how that came to be.
And what was your career path before horses?
I was a communications and marketing type person, in an array of different kinds of roles, working in New York and DC for small and large agencies. And then towards the end, I had my own consulting entity for about the last decade or so that I was working, and I specialized in working with cause related organizations. So mostly foundations and nonprofits, everything from local groups in Western North Carolina, where I was situated, to international foundations that took me all over the world doing that work. So very different, very different.
Did you feel a lot of my work is helping people take their spark of an idea and to bring it into fruition in
Mhm.
small ways, large ways, in whatever ways, but to feel that entrepreneurship is possible. Did
Mhm.
you feel that your earlier work set you up for just being able to set up the business structure of whatever it was that you were moving into that's become this amazing practice that you are helping so many horses? Was the creating your own business and launching on your own a hard part, or was it just an easy path from the work that you were doing before?
No, that was an easy path because I had already done that as a marketing entrepreneur. I had created my own entity and had been working as an independent consultant for 10 or 12 years. So the whole like startup and managing my own business and all that kind of thing, I'd already done that. So that was easy.
I loved how you said that you started out outside of the mainstream. And what I'm really interested in, there's a post that you made in the beginning of the year where you were talking about becoming more vocal about the deeper energetic work that you experience when you're with the
Hmm.
horses. And I'm
Hmm.
still myself talking around things, trying to find language that works, not as afraid to talk about the energetic component to
Hmm.
my work as I was, say, 5, 6 years ago. And we
Hmm.
are in just a really cool time in the horse
Hmm.
world where we're able to
Absolutely.
talk freely about these things and we're just coming about things from a different angle. But when did you notice that there was something maybe deeper going on with the work that you were doing with the horses?
From the very beginning. From the very beginning. I mean, I think it was part of my inherent connection in being around and working with animals in general, that I had never completely lost that I had as a kid, that sense of deeper connection. And I was lucky enough to always have, or I gravitated towards, I mean, I really think I just gravitated towards the people who were teaching the kind of body work, who integrated that kind of energetic piece of it into what they were doing. Whether they talked about it a ton or not, it was clear that that was part of what was going on. I mean, craniosacral therapy is a perfect example of that because it's a science-based practice that, you access the horse through their nervous system and the pulse of fluid that runs up and down the spine. And that's all very science-based. And there's a very deep, deep listening and energetic aspect to that work. Ask anybody who does it. Maybe you have to have a one-on-one conversation off camera with them, but if they're really good at it, they will tell you that that's undeniably part of that work. So
Yeah.
I think that was always part of the attraction for me, whether I knew it or not. And I was, again, the right teachers came into my life at the right time to kind of confirm how important that was in the body work. And I would be forever grateful to those folks who appeared on the radar screen for me and became teachers at the right time when I needed to feel like what I was doing and having that inclination was completely legitimate.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you were surrounded by mentors, teachers, and who who were able to validate what you were experiencing.
Yes, and some more than others. And I think I started out being, as a newbie, diving in and studying deeply on, the anatomy and the sources systems and, the science-based stuff. And there came a point in time where the right teacher came into my life, and also a very interesting part of what he demonstrated was a very science-based background and approach, but a very deep, energetic interweaving in the work that he talked about at great length, in addition to, sort of how to marry that with the science and what we can really see and feel versus what we feel and intuit kind of thing.
Are there any particular horses that stand out in your mind, horse clients or horses that you've been working with, period, that really transformed your work or deepened your understanding, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, it sounds a little trite maybe, but every horse I work with deepens my work because they're all individuals and they're all unique. And I mean, seriously, I walk away still from I hope this is always the case. I walk away from every session with a little bit of, huh, that was interesting.
Mm.
Kind of what did I learn? What did that horse show me, and help me? Because that's what they're doing, is they're just helping me become better at what I do by showing me what they need to show me.
And
So,
as you've gone deeper into your body and the horses' bodies, communicating, you working with them, showing them relief, and I don't even know how to ask this question, but have you noticed a shift in the way you move with your body through the world?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, it's interesting because this was more than just one or two people. So when I made the shift from working as a marketing communications person into the beginning of learning about the body work, and even the early days of just starting to practice on horses before I hung out my own shingle, but really getting into it and loving it and starting to make that transition, I would see people who, it was most interesting with the people who maybe hadn't seen me in a year or two. And they would see me and they would be like, wow, you seem different. You look different. Like your face is softer. Your energy is different. And I wasn't aware. I knew that I was happier. I wasn't miserable in my previous career. It was interesting, but it was so clear to me that when I started on this path with the body work, with the body working with the horses, that that's really what I was meant to be doing. And apparently it was so clear to people externally. It was just so interesting because, like I said, it was a number of people who were like, you look different. I mean, you actually even sound different. I was like, wow, cool.
So
So
there was this noticeable shift.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, which, it was so confirming. I mean, I could feel it. I knew that I was happier and I was loving the work, but it was so interesting to have people reflect that back to me.
And did you come from like what we would call quote unquote the traditional horse world? Or had you always been slightly mainstream in your or beyond the mainstream in your approach to horses?
No, I would say I came from pretty mainstream horse world. I mean, certainly as a kid, I'm 62. And so when I was riding horses as a kid, that was, back, oh God, bless us all. I mean, before we knew, not anywhere near what we know today about horsemanship and, humane treatment of the horses and humane training and understanding how their brains work and all that kind of good stuff. So I came from a pretty traditional horseback riding background. I mean, I was never, like a high level competitor or anything like that as a kid, but it was definitely very traditional. And there's, I mean, there are still a lot of people who are in that realm, as we know, in the horse world. But yeah, it's not like I had sort of an alternative horse education when I was a kid. No, it was pretty mainstream.
And as you have gone deeper into your work, and I know you work with horses all across the spectrum, I'm assuming from show horses all the way to horses in someone's backyard.
Hmm.
How have you crafted and created, if at all, better language to help people who may not be aware of deeper ways of looking at connecting with the horse? Have you found that it's a struggle to help horses gain better lives with their humans? Are people receptive to hearing what the horse needs them to hear?
Good question. Sometimes because people, including myself, see their horses as a reflection of themselves. And if their horse is having behavioral issues sometimes, or they can't figure things out, people will take it kind of personally. There are all sorts of different kinds of situations in that regard, but I have learned to be, very diplomatic with people when there's something going on. I'm never, ever going to shame or blame somebody in a situation because I am not here to judge anyone. I'm just here to help your horse feel better and find, better balance and relaxation in their bodies and in their minds. But yeah, I mean, it can be a little dicey sometimes, but I mean, I'm always there for the horse first. And so if I keep that in mind in a non-judgmental way, then I can 99 out of 100 times help the person begin to understand a little bit more about how they can help their horse and how what's going on with them has an effect on their horse and what they can do about that. Because my primary goal, as I said, is to help the horse feel better. But I really feel like part of my mission has always been to help the human understand how to help their horse feel better. And sometimes that requires, as you well know, the human working on themselves. So, and I'm not a psychotherapist. I can't really go into that work with folks. But I mean, just the simple example of when I'm working with a horse, especially a horse who at first can't settle, or the human describes their horse as being very nervous and be careful because this, that, or the other thing might happen. And, okay, I'm going to listen and take it in. And then, I'm going to breathe and be calm and, bring the energy down as much as I possibly can. And that includes helping the human bring their energy down a little bit. It's interesting when I can see that somebody has high, buzzy energy. I'm going to work with them. And usually it's just through, let's just breathe, let's
Yeah.
just breathe because your horse is not breathing. I can guarantee if the human's energy is like that, the horse is not taking deep breaths. So let's just all breathe for a minute here and let's, just take it down a notch. And
And it was
people,
100% the humans that brought me to the humans' reaction and the things that came up when humans were with horses that brought me to the work I do in
yep,
mindset coaching,
yep,
because I needed some tools.
yep,
Because I think for most of my life within the horse industry, emotion wasn't something we were supposed to be bringing into the ring. If
hmm,
it came inevitably into the ring,
hmm,
it was kind of left there. And the feeling I got was that we were leaving the horse to absorb it.
yeah,
And I thought, okay, I need some more tools so I can give these tools to the humans. And hopefully we can make the horse's life a little better without just kind of flying projections everywhere. I love the lifelong growing complexity of what this type of work, whether directly with the horses or on myself, shows me because every single day I'm learning something new.
Yeah.
And do you find that same like is your curiosity and I don't know if you're the sort of person that I would define myself as just always curious, always wanting to figure something out, always wanting to see
Mhm.
the what's underneath everything. And I think that this life spent with horses is such a beautiful place to be in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, because there's mysteries and paradoxes and seemingly unsolvable things around every turn. I mean, the human body is enough of a mystery, and we can talk to one another about how we're feeling and what how what's hurting or our emotional state. The horses can't quite communicate, obviously, the same way. They do communicate pretty clearly most of the time, but not in the same way. And so it is a puzzle. It's an intriguing puzzle for me with every horse when I first meet the horse to figure out, how can I best be of service to this animal? And that's taking in the whole thing, including very much the emotional aspect of where the horse is at. Because if the horse is not able to settle, if their nervous system is on high, then I can't do anything with their body. And I'm not going to do anything with their body until they begin to trust me and allow me in a bit. I go in by invitation. And I've learned that a little bit the hard way over the years, but believe me, I've got it now. And that's really important to me. And so that also means that every often, first sessions with a horse or the first couple sessions with a horse might look pretty different from one horse to another, depending on where they're at on that spectrum. So,
And I think it just massively fascinating. And I'm always saying this when I'm giving somebody a tour of our feed room here at the barn, of how much human supplements begin with the horse industry. And in a lot of ways, I feel like it's just the racetrack trying to find an edge that doesn't test on the drug tests.
right.
So there's so many supplements that have just made its way into the world with horses, but then how many of those things have kind of are beneficial to the humans on the other side of that? But have you found the same in horse physiotherapy? Are there things that you're discovering working with the horses that also correspond and move over towards the humans? Things that are coming on the horizon that are beneficial to horses, or excuse me, beneficial to humans, but we've known for a long time that it's beneficial to the horse. Does that make any sense?
Oh, interesting. I'm trying to think of an example. It usually works the other way around. It's usually like craniosacral therapy's been around for 60 years or something like that, or maybe more, but it's only the last probably 25 that it's begun to enter into the horse world. So it usually works the other way around. Yeah, nothing is really coming to mind that we're doing with the horses that is
Yeah.
moving into the human world, really.
After doing this work, do you take better care of your body?
Oh, finally, I'm starting to do that. It took a while. Yeah. And I mean, fortunately, I'm in good shape. I'm knock on wood. I'm in good shape. I don't have any health issues. I've always been very healthy and have generally stayed in pretty decent shape. And I'm trying to be a bit more committed to that now because I want to keep doing this work for as long as I can. But yeah, I've not been fabulous about that, but I've gotten better over the last year in terms of finding my own body workers to help me on a more regular basis. So,
And isn't it interesting? I think there's so many memes on the internet about how a horse is taken care of and the humans that love the horses are, we always just kind of put ourselves on the side with that. But I have been, there's a few tiny tools that we've added in just as a normal course of lessons we do at the farm. So if you are a 4-year-old child or you are a 70-year-old woman coming back to horses for the first time after a long time, we show everybody how to do a basic bladder meridian release.
Hmm.
And what I have found, because there's been so many people over the past couple of years that I'll be standing talking about what I'm doing. I'll have my hand against the horse's neck. And I immediately then start asking myself, can I feel my feet? Am I breathing? And I have this little mantra that goes in my head. But I think about all the time the tools that I don't use on myself, whether that's in mindset work or that's in energy work or in body work. But I have this library of tools
Yeah.
that I just need to take time to use on myself.
Yeah, I mean, I say this all the time, and the horses have changed my life. I mean, they have made me a better person for sure. And still, I am undoubtedly my best self when I am in a session with a horse, because I know in order to be effective, I need to be grounded, I need to be calm, I need to be present, I need to be open, I need to be allowing. I can't be judgmental, I can't have an agenda, I can't be trying to fix anything per se. And so it's a really beautiful place to be. I've gotten pretty good at, getting there. And I have also gotten pretty good at allowing that to carry over into the rest of my life for sure. But it's still, I will tell you, that's where I'm my best self, is in those sessions working with the horses. So
What sort of, if any, prep work do you do? Do you have any little rituals before you go in?
I don't really, I don't. I'm pretty good at just once when I start working with the horse, I don't walk right up to the horse and, put my hands on them. I will walk up to the horse and stand next to them and allow them to turn to me, to make contact with me, to acknowledge me in some way before I put a hand on them.
Yeah.
And while that's happening, I am breathing and, getting myself into that grounded, present state. I mean, I just go there automatically now, pretty much. It's a little bit harder if it's really chaotic around me where I'm working with the horse, which is usually not the case. I mean, people are usually able to find a space where it's quieter. So, and it's also interesting to me that for almost as long as I can remember, that when I am working with a horse, I don't talk much when I'm working with the horse. I am happy to answer questions. And I usually tell the owner that it's like, if you've got, and, if you have questions or you want to know what I'm doing or whatever, as we're moving here, don't hesitate to, ask while we're all here together. And quite often what happens is that people just get really quiet, and other people on the periphery, if there are other people that are there sort of doing their things, or somebody wants to come up and ask the question of the owner, they're kind of like, can I ask you a question? I mean, they just kind of get the vibe that it's like,
Yeah.
let's everybody just be chill and just calm and quiet. It kind of cracks me up sometimes, because I don't ask everybody. I'm like, all right, quiet on set. No, I don't, it's it's not like that. It's just how I work. And I think
They
people just
just do it.
they just do it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you ever had a horse say a hard no?
That's a good question. I would say I haven't. One horse pops to mind that wasn't a hard no. I don't think I've ever had a hard no. I've had horses that have really needed help regulating their nervous system. And I worked with a horse not very long ago that I didn't really do any of the traditional body work with her, because she needed help just being present in her body. And by the end of our, session together, she was much calmer and she was breathing, but she needed that time just to kind of get into that place for her own well-being, And that, to me, that's huge for the horse, first of all, especially if it's a horse who lives in such a way that doesn't often have the opportunity to find that kind of regulated space, if you will, and that changes, I have found that when a horse can simply go from sympathetic to parasympathetic mode in their nervous system, that their posture will start to change and their body will follow the nervous system, basically, which is actually kind of the theme of the work I do, that the body follows the nervous system. But so that can happen. But like a hard no of a horse just absolutely saying, I mean, I get no's all the time about places on the body, or if I start to go a little bit too fast. But I've gotten to be really good at reading the horses and not getting my goal is not to get to the point where a horse has to tell me a hard no, has to give me a hard no. Then I have pushed through something, I've gone too fast, I've blown through something, and I'm pretty good at not doing that now. So
It's fascinating. And I'm thinking of a recent example in our farm with a horse that came in as a school horse, and instructors and apprentices and friends of the barn had gone to try the horse. So they knew what that horse looked like with a regulated nervous system. And then when she moved into the farm, she had this mare had one of the harder transitions I've ever had bringing a horse in.
mm,
And if we had not had the baseline of what she looked like when she was balanced, if what her behavior, what her what her energy felt like when she was balanced, we would have immediately written her off for the horse that arrived. And it just, we got to see her in all the right spots before she came. But I think of how many horses are being purchased unseen, shipped across the country, or shipped across the ocean,
yeah.
and they're arriving in that state.
Hmm.
And the more we can educate people about how to help the horses get to that state, or get to a balanced place.
Yeah.
And it was just fascinating to me too, watching this mare as we all collectively worked with her to bring her into a state of balance over the course of weeks, how her body completely changed, the way she stood completely changed.
Right. Right, exactly, because then the body follows the nervous system a lot
Yeah.
of, and yeah, and I mean, you know the deal. I mean, people want to get stuff done. There's, time is money, and we got to get on with it. And there's an agenda here of showing, or whatever it is, and we blow through a lot of stuff, and people are becoming much, I think we're living through a real tipping point in time in the horse industry, where you've got people at the one end, the more traditional end, who are sort of digging their heels in because there's an uprising of sorts, and or a growing consciousness, if you will, of people who are beginning to understand that maybe the traditional way of doing things isn't so fabulous, and that maybe these horses are actually a lot more capable, for lack of a better word, deeper beings than we have been taught to give them credit for. Because I think a lot of this is hangover from older ways of being around horses, when they just weren't credited as being very smart, or very, it's just kind of like you make them do what you're going to do, and you get on with it. And, the last piece of that is that we have to work on ourselves. I mean, it's what I write about most of the time, quite honestly, in one way or another, right? And that's why your work is so important, because we can't forsake that. We have got to work on our ability to be present and be authentic. I mean, I always say we can't always be Buddha every day at the barn, but be authentic, because horses are prey animals. And I think it really unsettles them when they're around us, when we present in one way, but they know that we're feeling another way, and that is dangerous to them. They're like, "Ugh, I don't even know what I'm seeing. One aspect is here, but I'm feeling that this person is really fearful or angry or whatever it is." And I think it really freaks them out. And
It's
so,
like they're seeing double.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we need to do the work. And a lot of people either just aren't willing to, don't want to believe that that's an important aspect of horsemanship, or on the positive side, take the journey on and give it a go. It's not easy, but they've certainly changed me into a kinder, gentler, way more present human being. And that has made its way into the rest of my life and all my relationships and how I move through the world. And I'm deeply grateful for that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's an interesting time where we are presented with being able to, we can lead forward with things that would have been considered not very acceptable by the mainstream
Right.
5, 10 years ago. But we also are sinking into a horse industry where it's difficult to have viable professions, where it's difficult for anybody to be making a living wage,
Mm,
and where our older trainers are not being replaced, our older instructors are not being replaced, land is going away.
yeah.
So we've got an industry that's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and becoming a lot more concentrated in, let me think about how to even put this. Concentrated, it's always been an elite, there's always been an elite aspect to horses.
It's expensive. Yeah.
Yes. And things are getting more and more and more expensive. I got a call this morning from a local farm asking us about what our board rates were. And we were talking about how we almost need to be at $1,200, $1,500 a month
Hmm.
across the board, which is unheard of for the area that I was in and that I'm in upstate South Carolina, 5 years ago. Before COVID, that was unheard of. And how it's shrinking, our clients that can afford to have horses are shrinking. So I'm always trying to think of how we can adapt to keep horses that may not have much of a life otherwise that would make incredible professors, how
Hmm.
we can keep a large amount of people in front of horses and have that help sustain and keep our herds going, and how to do that without stripping the horses of their dignity or are working them to death. So
Yeah.
we're always playing along those lines.
Yep.
So we've got this great dichotomy within the industry now. Like we can do all sorts of stuff and talk about all sorts of stuff that we couldn't before, but it's also an industry that's shrinking. And I'm just very curious to see where this all is going to lead us.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Yep.
I could not imagine doing anything else with my life.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like you said, it makes me a better person. It makes me a more conscious person. It makes me aware of the fact that I have to continually work on myself. Because if I slack off, the horses are going to show me. They're going to let me know right away if I'm listening
Right.
and not just raging against like, why won't you do this thing? But looking at that mirror that reflects back. And I think of them as their own entities. I don't want to see, they're not a mirror, but they reflect things that I wouldn't be able to see otherwise.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I agree. But mirror neurons are a real thing, and they do reflect back to us. And I think that's both the beauty and the very hard part sometimes. I mean, I've been through it. I continue to go through it with my own horses. It's not easy. And, it's finding that balance of somewhere in the middle between feeling like you have to be uber sensitive and paying attention to and trying to listen to every scintilla of what's going on versus giving up and blowing through and kick on, and that balance changes every day. That's the other thing. I mean, the horses are like us. Every day is different for them. There's some level of consistently usually involved in how we are with them, but they are also complex sentient beings that on a Tuesday they might be a little sore or a little barn sour or a little not so into what you want to do, and Wednesday maybe they are. So it's being able to hold a lot of stuff and a lot of possibilities at once in order to be the best partners we can be for them. And that's not easy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so worth it, but it's not easy. And to me, it's a lifelong practice.
Mhm.
Anybody who says they have figured out everything there is to figure out, wow, you must be on your eighth lifetime with horses because that's how long it's going to take me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Every single day.
yeah.
And lately we talked about your craniosacral work, and you had mentioned the balance through movement method, and I have started slowly working through that. Like
Mhm.
it's signed up as soon as it was offered online, and have been obsessed with following the work. Can you give me a little synopsis of what you're doing when you're
Sure.
doing
Sure.
balance?
So I am on a certification track to be a certified body worker through Celeste's balance through movement method. And that means that I have trained with her a little bit in person, and I've done the online bodywork course, and now I'm doing the certification piece. I think the thing that I really love the most about this work is that it starts with having a connection with the horse that you're working with. It does not start with get in the saddle. It does not start with here are the techniques for the to do the body work. It starts with you need to develop a connection with the horse that is in front of you in order to begin to get them to trust you and to release tension starting in the neck and the pole and the thoracic sling, and to relax into that, begin to relax into that posture. And you can't rush it. You have to be very conscious of and learn how to make that connection. And it's interesting for me because I'm learning how to do that connection not only with my own horses, but with client horses. It's been really interesting. I mean, I have two horses of my own, one of which I've had for 7 years, and I have a pretty deep connection with her. And the other one is much newer. I've just had him for almost a year, and he's young. And I realized when I started doing this work with him, I was like, oh, I have some boundary issues with him. I need to figure that out a little bit because I think, well, I'm the body worker. I got that figured out. But with my own younger horse, I was like, okay, so we need to create some calm boundaries here before we can really settle in and get going on this work a bit more. But it starts at that place of connection and trust. And you can't force it, just like you shouldn't be forcing any kind of posture. You
Mhm.
can't force that. So that's what I love the most about it. It's also excruciatingly simple in a way. It's not complicated. It's not, you don't need a manual to kind of
Mhm.
get your head around it, but to get your heart and your emotion around it does take a little bit of doing, but it's really on paper it's like deceptively simple. uh,
Yes. And I have found that and I'm so thankful for the framework and the framework being put together into a system,
mhm,
because then I have these very simple tools that I can add into everything that we're doing. If
mhm,
I have someone coming for a riding lesson for the very first time, if I have someone just coming to work with groundwork, um, it becomes a part of our daily life at the farm.
mhm,
And the thoracic sling and giving the horse space to be able to relax through their chest has transformed every single school horse in this farm.
mhm,
It's And now I'm aware of that. I'm like, okay, what's happening? What's happening with the underside of the neck?
mhm.
Then I'm aware of it in myself.
Yeah. Right. We're
Yeah.
feeling the tension in our neck as we're sitting here. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Tension in my jaw, tension in my neck,
Yeah.
and the horses, and we're currently too. We're doing a lot with the doing three basic flexions as a lead in to any sort of in hand work we're doing on the ground.
Mhm,
And that blows my mind. If I ask the horse to relax its jaw, if I ask it to flex slightly to the left and to the right through its neck, if I relax it and get them to flex a little bit in their hips, it it reboots their nervous system.
mhm.
And I've played with that whenever we have a horse that may be slightly agitated or worried about something. And I'm like, let's do the flexions. And they're like, thanks, I feel better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And to me, my philosophy, and I think it comes from the early craniosacral training, is that I always talk about working with the horse and not on the horse. And the way I approach it is that I'm really asking the horse to engage with me in their own healing, in their own development of a higher level of well being for them. That I'm not there to make it happen, but that they are going to show me, I may see things and feel things when I'm looking at the moving or looking at their posture and what's going on, but they're also going to show me what needs to be addressed, which may not be what I see with my eyes at first. It may not be what the owner tells me is the issue. They're talking about a symptom usually of what the issue is or issues. But the horse is going to show me, and it's an engagement of working together and ultimately helping the horse do what they need to do to find better balance and hit the reset button. It's almost like I'm facilitating it. I'm not even
Yeah.
really facilitating it. So, that's very different than going in and feeling like you need to fix a problem or,
Mhm.
move a bone or, whatever it may be. I've done that and it just doesn't work as well for me
Yeah.
or for horses, most importantly. So
Was that a slow progression that's been going on throughout the course of your career? Or were you giving an understanding of that when you first started doing body work because you had begun with craniosacral?
I think there was some inherent understanding of that from the beginning. It took a few years for me to really understand that at a deeper level. It started out that way because craniosacral therapists are engaging with the horse's nervous system. And you can't go in and, fix the horse's nervous system per se. You've got to engage with it.
Mhm.
Um, and that's engaging with the whole horse. So, yeah, I mean, it was kind of baked in from the beginning, but it took me a while to really fully understand what that meant.
And is there any tiny, simple tool that you would love for people to just do in
Mhm.
their daily interactions with a horse?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is something that you've already mentioned, which is the Masterson method bladder sweep. I mean, I think that's I continue to think, and I trained in Masterson early on. I didn't get certified, but I think Jim is a genius and that he's created a system of body work he's made it very easy for people to learn. That's one of the things that I love about it the most. Like if you're a really interested owner and you really want to do something to help your horse, the way that he's created that it is in such a way that I think it's fairly easy for people to learn and do it. Like buy the book with lots of pictures and simple explanations, and it's not complicated stuff. But I think the bladder sweep is lovely because it's also a connection thing, you
Yeah.
know. I often give that to people as kind of homework that they can do. And I always start with, before you put the 2 or 3 fingers at your horse's poll, you have to make sure that you are breathing, that
Mhm.
you are feeling grounded, that you're calm, and that you absolutely are not in any kind of a rush. You have to be in that kind of place. If you're not, don't do it. And so for me, it's very important to help instill in the people that they have to be really present with their horse in order for that. And I love it because it's very subtle too. You do have to slow down and you have to like, okay, like we're looking for a blink. We're looking for maybe a little flick of an ear, or we're looking for a flare of a nostril or something sometimes. And I love it because I've had so many clients over the years that like get into it. They're like, yeah, they'll send me a video or something like, look what I saw when I was doing this, or I noticed that she, licked and chewed when I got down to the middle of her back or something like that. And I love that. I mean, that just lights me up, helping people connect with their horses at a deeper level, and feel that connection. I mean, that to me is just almost the best because everybody benefits. It's not just when I'm there, it's, the work
Mhm.
carries on between the two of them, and that's the best.
And I love whenever I'm showing, usually adults, they're fine. They're fine standing there with a hand against the horse's neck and just chilling with them. But adults, it's this beautiful icebreaker. And usually one of the first things that I show people how to just do something very simple along the horse's bladder meridian when they first come. It's the awkwardness of standing and waiting with nothing happening.
Yeah.
And there is nothing better to just do away with expectation and
Mhm. Yeah.
Just throw it out as soon as we begin working with the horse. Because
Yes.
once we move past that awkwardness that we want to fill with something,
Yeah.
then what I find is that's where I'm left with the connection on the other side of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we live in a culture of, get her done, I mean, something's got to be happening here or nothing's, what's the point, And so, I mean, that was part of my training over the years was getting to that place of really slowing things down. I mean, it took me a while, I mean, especially coming from more sort of, corporate world work and all that kind of stuff. It was really a 180 turn, honestly. I was super ready for it, but it doesn't mean that you just drop into it overnight. It takes a while to slow down and breathe and let go of, the constant letting go of expectations. That was another thing for me. In the early days, it was kind of like I'd come in and I'd see something, or the owner would tell me something, and I'd be like, okay, let's get at that. And that energy and that intention just didn't really render very good results because it wasn't allowing the horse to feel like they had a say in what was really going on. And I was working too hard in the early days of just trying to solve very specific problems versus stepping back, taking a deep breath, seeing and feeling what I saw and felt, but also letting the horse lead the way too.
Yeah. So, what does success look like for you in this profession? So, I know it's so much more than that, but so not in terms of like career advancement or growth, but in this incarnation of you now as the equine body worker, what is success?
I could feel my body lighting up just a couple minutes ago talking to you about helping people have a deeper connection with their horse.
Mhm.
And that's at this point in time is just one of the best things for me. I mean, when they can see the difference that this very quiet, subtle work can make, and when they feel empowered to support that work by things that they can do with their horses and how they can be with their horse is really gratifying to me. I mean, that to me is success. I mean, I'll give you an example of a very recent client that I had that I've been working with for like, I don't know, I guess like 6 months. And when I started out with this horse and owner, the owner I could tell was kind of nervous, and for good reason. The owner had come off the horse a couple of times, and the horse had had some issues and had been diagnosed with a few not minor things. And so they were trying to find their way kind of back to one another, but everybody, horse and owner, were both kind of nervous about the whole thing. And, fast forward to a more recent session after I've been working with them, and the owner is somebody who, has done the bladder meridian work, introduced them or reintroduced them. I think she might have been aware of it, but to the balance through movement method, the pillar one work where you're helping your horse really relax their head and neck and shoulders. And I walked away from my most recent session with them, and I said to the owner, I was like, you two you're both so different from when we started this 6 months ago. I mean, your horse is standing here licking and chewing and being like, this is awesome. And she's feeling much better, and her posture's better, her movement's better. And just as importantly to me, the owner has clearly softened and is more present with her animal. And at the end of the day, that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
It just is. You can throw all of this stuff, and it's actually not a good idea to be throwing, have 4 different kinds of body work done in chiropractic and have the vet there and blah, blah, blah. I mean, throwing the kitchen sink at an animal is not a good idea either. But I really believe that if a horse is going to have long-term health, it's the owner's responsibility and their ability to help their horse feel safe in their own body that is the most important thing at the end of the day. And that's really how I describe what I do now is basically I'm trying to help that horse come back into its body and feel safe. And I'm there for an hour a month. So guess what? It's the owner and other people around that horse that need to be able to do that to some extent also. So that's part of my mission, is to help, to the extent that I can, help the people around the horse understand that.
Do most of your clients do their homework?
Um, I think I'm pretty good at sussing out the people who will actually do the homework and those people who will not. So when I choose to give somebody homework, they've given me signs and indications that they're interested, or they have simply asked me. They're like, "What can I do?" Which is the best, and I can always give them something. So yeah.
How far is your geographic area? How far do you service?
Yeah, so I'm based in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which is in eastern Tennessee, about an hour north of Asheville. And I'm going further these days. I mean, I was staying within a couple of hours of where I live, which means I go down to Tryon and into the foothills and into Asheville. I'm going to Knoxville. I'm starting to go back to Chapel Hill, which is about 4 hours away. I'm planning a trip up north to the Northeast this summer. Basically, I'm pretty willing to go almost anywhere where there is a group of people that I really want to work with who really kind of get it. And that's how I'm letting things manifest these days. So,
And I know your move to Tennessee, was that within the past year? Was it?
a couple years, yeah, about 2.5 years ago. Mhm.
And we've all just on opposite sides of the mountain and beyond been impacted from Helene and the storm. And your life is on the road. And I feel like I've just kind of bashed my head against the wall over and over, trying to get the word out, as we all have.
Mhm.
You were involved with some amazing, getting information out in such an amazing way in the early days after the storm. I thank you for your words.
Thank you for your words because you did at least as much as I did for sure. So, it was and is devastating. I still think that most of the country is clueless about what happened here. Yeah, so we take care of those that we can here, and the generosity from all across the country was really almost overwhelming. It was so heartening within the horse community, which is where I was focusing most of my support and work after the hurricane, where I could.
It
So,
was so beautiful to watch the daily updates of donations that were being brought in to purchase hay,
mhm,
to find drivers to get hay to remote areas.
mhm,
That was in the midst of all the devastation and heartbreak. I think that I can often roll my eyes at so much of the horse industry, but it is such a massive family.
mhm,
And even if and I think that the industry has a really lovely way of showing something that the whole world needs right now, of throwing our distinctions aside when it's time to get to work.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that was one of the amazing things about it because the horse industry is no different than any other group, that there are factions and we, throw sticks and stones at each other sometimes about, the different disciplines and argue about things and so on and so forth. And then something really overwhelming happens that takes all those distinctions away, literally washes them away. They just don't matter. And people stepped up, and it didn't matter where you were, what your politics were, what kind of horse you had. Who cared? Could you help your neighbor? Could you help get some hay down the road or from another state or whatever? So yeah, I mean that's the way things should be all the time, but it took a disaster for people to really come together. And I hope that that's one of the things that comes out of it, at least on the human side in the region that was so hard hit, is that there is a much stronger undergirding of community for people in Southern Appalachia than there was before the storm. I hope.
And it was interesting with I just recently made the drive to Nashville. So going through Asheville, going through the detour, because part of 40, I guess now there's a single lane open
Mhm.
on 40, but the time there was just the detour through lots of small towns. The detour is basically following the rivers.
Yeah.
And from day one, my pocket of upstate South Carolina, we were had lots of wind damage and lots of trees down, lots of structures taken out around the city. But as someone who had felt like I was in touch with my friends in North Carolina, my friends that were in the harder hit areas, but seeing it myself with my own eyes as we recently made that drive into Tennessee, it was just like I was silent. There wasn't anything that I could say. And this is, months and months and months after the hurricane came through.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in your travels geographically? Does it look like we're starting to get our spaces realigned?
Yes and no. I mean, the closest area to me is less than 10 minutes down the road where the Nola River overshot its banks by a lot, and houses and animals and people got swept away. It was more contained here because we didn't get the same amount of rain that Asheville and other areas south of here got. So where I live in Jonesboro, looked almost like nothing happened, but 10 minutes down the road on the river, it was a complete disaster. That river is changed for the rest of my lifetime. I mean, it's a huge, delta in areas that no one's going to do anything about that really. And, Irwin, Tennessee is about 20 minutes down the road from me. And that still looks like something happened a week ago in a way. It's still, and they've been working very hard on cleaning it up, and it still looks like a disaster has hit. So I think that, it's going to take a while for both the human piece of this to get cleaned up and taken care of, and nature will just take its time and do what it needs to do, because it was just significant, with the rivers. The other side of the highway in Irwin looks like there's been a forest fire because it took out so many trees and created just a muddy delta for miles on the other side of the highway. That's not going to change super quickly over time. Nature will heal, but yeah, so it's
And now we have the threat of forest fires coming through.
right, right.
After,
And it's going to be the case for a long time because there's so much downed, So yeah, it was a life-changing event, that's for sure. And I feel very lucky that I didn't firsthand experience any real effects from it, but we all know people who did, who live in the region.
yeah.
And yeah, so
Is there anybody who's out there doing good that you want to draw attention to if anybody happens to be listening to this?
in terms of hurricane recovery type stuff,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I mean, I think on the horse front, I do think Fleet of Angels is a really reputable, good national organization that was there pretty quickly from the beginning. So I think that they're a good one on the horse front. I think there are a ton of small organizations I used to live in Asheville. I lived in Asheville for 13 years before I moved up here. I think there are a number of small, mostly nonprofit organizations in Asheville that are doing really great work at helping that devastated community. That are too many of that. You have many of them listed on your media and your website and stuff, which is great. So people go there and find them and keep giving money. So yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for being here with me today. And I have a couple more questions before we get off this line. But if somebody was curious about going deeper into body work, energy work, all that stuff with horses, where would you send them?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, there are so many choices these days. It's almost kind of overwhelming. I think we're actually living through like a golden age of equine body work right now, which is pretty cool, Yeah, I mean, I think there are just so many different kinds of modalities, just start dipping a toe, reading into the different directions that you can go in. I mean, there's, sports massage, and there's craniosacral therapy, and there's myofascial release, and there's energetic work, and you can be doing Reiki with horses, and there are many different directions to go. So yeah, I would say just dip a toe into a few different things and see where it leads you.
And is your writing anywhere else beyond social media? Where can people find your writing? Because I love reading your stuff.
No, thanks. Well, back at you. It's not right now. I just use my True Nature Equine Bodywork and Wellness Facebook page to post my musings occasionally. So that's the extent of it for right now.
And is that the best place for people to reach you?
It is. Yeah. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And is there, and we've talked about so many different aspects of things today, and I love talking to you, but is there, distilling all of this down, what do you want people to most know about the work that you do and what horses tell you in that work?
Yeah, that I would say that trust yourself, that you know your horse better than anybody else does. And trust yourself, listen to the opinions of others that you trust and you want to listen to, but at the end of the day, trust yourself and trust what your horse is telling you, and slow down and breathe and listen.
I love that. And I can think about how my body has always told me the truth with that, whether I was willing to listen to it in the moment or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just human nature. I've spent a lot of time. I still occasionally get caught in that vortex of being a little bit at war with myself, that I don't want to listen to my inner voice because I don't necessarily trust it, or it's going against what my brain or somebody else that I trust has been telling me. And, it just keeps coming back to just get quiet and listen to what you know. I mean, it's really the best way I can put it, because you just can't go wrong with that. You just can't go wrong with that. And to me, that's also, I will end with saying that that also applies to advocating for your horse. If you feel some inkling that something isn't right, but lots of other people around you are telling you that you're crazy or you're wrong or it's fine or that's just the way things are, listen to yourself and stand up for your horse and do something.
Yes. I thank you so much for
Oh,
sitting down
thank you.
with me
This was so much
today.
fun.
I love this. I love this. And I'm going to have 1,000 more questions for you that I'm just going to be sending to you. Like, I need this. I need more information on this. I need your thoughts on this.
Yeah,
But I do. I thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
yeah, thanks. You do the same. This has been fun.
Thank you for joining me for this conversation with Sue Lomenzo, someone I respect immensely. Sue inspires so many people to think outside the box and delve deeper into understanding and connection. Her work is a beautiful example of what's possible when we slow down, listen deeply, and approach our horses and life with kindness and curiosity. If you'd like to learn more about Sue's work, you can find her on her Facebook page, True Nature Equine Bodywork and Wellness, or reach her directly at suelomenzo@gmail.com. And I'll be linking to all that information in our show notes. If you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to subscribe to Relatively Stable wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, thank you for being here with me. I look forward to bringing you more stories of resilience, connection, and healing. Love, Kim.